Hello! Today I'm going to show you how to add custom arrows to Minecraft using Forge 1.17.1. So in Forge, there are three main classes that make up an arrow. An arrow item, an arrow entity, and an arrow renderer. You can find these classes in the external libraries, and if you scroll down, you can find Minecraft Forge. I'm using parchment mappings. If you click here, if we go to Net, Minecraft, World, Item, and Arrow Item, you can find the Arrow Item class. In the same world package, you can go into Entity, Projectile, and Arrow. This is the Arrow entity. Then you can go into Client, Renderer, Entity, and find Arrow Renderer. So these are the three classes we will be mimicking when making our custom arrow. There's another class that we may find useful and is ModEntityType. We will be making our own version of this class as well. So first we're going to create an arrow item class for our custom arrow. So we're going to go into our project here, go into source, main, Java, and then to wherever your items are stored. So I'm going to put it in here. I'm going to create a new Java class called RubyArrowItem because today I'm going to be making a Ruby arrow for my mod Gems and Crystals. Once you create that, you're going to do extends arrow item, and then you're going to create a constructor for that. And I don't like the names of these, so I'm going to call this properties. Just auto completes. And then if we look into the arrow item class, we can copy these two methods because we will be using these for our own class. So if we paste these in here, and then if we do @override, we do that for both of them. So for this arrow, we're going to be adding custom damage. So what we're going to be doing is adding a variable called public final float damage. And in this constructor, we're going to add to the parameters float damage, and then this dot damage equals damage. So in this create arrow method, we're going to remove this method call because we're not going to be using it. And we're going to be calling set base damage this dot damage. Also in this method, we're going to be replacing this arrow item dot class with our own custom class. So just copy that in there or type it out. So right now this arrow object refers to the base Minecraft arrow entity. So what we're going to do is make our own arrow entity and change this to that. So what I'm going to do is go into my world package and then create a new package that's entity and dot projectile. And then in this package, I'll be creating a new Java class. I'll be calling this RubyArrow. And this is for the entity. So we're going to write extends abstract arrow. So then we're going to be implementing the get pickup item method. And then we're going to create constructors. We're going to create these two obstructors here. And then we're going to change these to public. So all the methods in our public instead of protected. And I'm also going to be changing all the names to these because these are just kind of gross. So this will be type. This will be level. This will be type. This will be shooter. This will be level. Also, don't forget to change them in the supers as well. Now that we have all that, we're going to create a new variable, private final item. And then make sure to import the correct one and reference item. So as you can see, we have a little error here. And to fix that, we're going to go into our items class where you register your items. I have mine in item init. So here we're going to create an item for our Ruby arrow. So we're going to do public static final registry object item, then Ruby arrow equal items dot register Ruby arrow and comma and then lambda new Ruby arrow item, and then item dot properties, then dot tab, and then a creative tab. So I'm going to use my own custom creative tab. And then after this, we're going to do a comma, and then this is going to be the damage. So I'm going to do 1.5 F, whatever you want here. And then a semicolon. So we can head back into our RubyArrow class and then do this dot reference item equals item init, or wherever you put your item we just created, and then RubyArrow dot get. Then in here we're going to be adding item, reference item, and then down here we do this dot reference item equals reference item. Then in get pickup item here we'll be doing new item stack this dot reference item. So what we're actually going to do here is remove this, but we need a type for here. So that's what we're going to do next. Within the entity package, I'm going to create a new Java class, and I'm going to call it ModEntityType. So this class is kind of similar to my item init and the block init, where you create a deferred register and register to the event bus. So that's what we're going to be doing here for entities. So what we're going to do is we're going to add public static final deferred register. Then in the triangle bracket, we'll do entity type, then another triangle bracket and a question mark. Then we're going to call this entities equals deferred register dot create forge registries dot entities, and then comma, and then your mod ID. So for me, it's gems and crystals dot mod ID, and then a semicolon. So at the bottom here, we're going to create a register method to register to the event bus. So public static void register I event bus, and then curly braces, and then entities dot register event bus. So in here, we're going to create an entity for our RubyArrow, but if you look at the entity type class that we looked at briefly earlier, you could actually take this and copy it, bring it into your ModEntityType, add a comment, paste that in, and then we could use this as a template for our custom arrow. So we're going to do public static final registry object, and then a triangle bracket, entity type, and then another triangle bracket, and then our arrow entity that we created. So RubyArrow, and then give it a name. So Ruby_arrow, and do equals entities dot register RubyArrow, and then a comma, a lambda, entity type dot builder, and then dot, and then triangle bracket RubyArrow, and after that of, and then a parenthesis, RubyArrow new with 2 colons, and then we're going to do a comma, mob category dot misc. After this, we're going to add dot sized 0.5 f, and then a comma 0.5 f. And then after that, we'll be doing a dot client tracking range of 4 dot update interval equals 20, and then we're doing dot build, and then a new resource location, and then the first parameter will be our mod ID. For me, it's gems and crystals dot mod ID, and then I'll be doing a comma, and then we'll be doing double quotes for string and adding the name of our item. So RubyArrow, and they'll be doing dot to string. So now that we've done that, we can go back into RubyArrow, and we can add ModEntityType dot RubyArrow dot get. So next I'm going to go to where I call the register method for my items in my blocks, and I'm going to call this one. So I have that in my util registry handler. Some people may have it in their main class. So in here, we're going to click enter, and we're going to do ModEntityType dot register. Then we're going to copy this in, This is the event bus. And there we go. Next, we're going to create our renderer for our custom arrow. So I'm going to go to the base of the package here, and I'm going to click new and package. I'm going to type client.renderer.entity. And then here, I'm going to create a new Java class called RubyArrowRenderer. So we're going to type extends arrow renderer, and then add triangle bracket and add our arrow entity, so RubyArrow. And then we're going to implement the method get texture location, and then we're going to create our constructor. I'm going to change the name to this to context. So here I'm going to add an at only in, and then dist.client. So in this method, we're going to add item, import that, reference item equals p entity, because I didn't bother to change the name, dot get pickup item, dot get item, and then semicolon. Then here we're going to add new resource location, and then your mod ID. Then a string for the next parameter, textures / entity / projectiles, plural. And then another slash, then plus reference item dot get registry name dot get path, and then plus, then another string for dot png. And there's the renderer. Next, we have to create an event subscriber for our renderer. So here in the client package, we're going to right click, create new Java class, and we're going to call it client mod event subscriber. So on top of this class, we're going to do at event bus subscriber, and mod.event bus subscriber is totally fine. And then we're going to do parenthesis, and then mod ID equals, and then the mod ID. So for me, gems and crystals dot mod ID. Then we're going to do bus, and that equals mod.event bus subscriber dot bus dot mod. Then a comma. And then we're going to do value equals dist.client. So then within the class, we're going to create a subscribe event. So do at subscribe event. So we're going to create a method public static void on client set up, and then entity renderers event dot register renderers, and then call it event. Then curly brackets, and then do event dot register entity renderer. Then in here, ModEntityType dot RubyArrow dot get, or your custom arrow, and then the renderer. So RubyArrowRenderer, and then double colon, and then new. And that should do it for all of our Java coding. Next, we're going to be doing some JSON in our resources. First, I'm going to add it to the lang. So go into your lang here, and then add item dot gems and crystals, or your mod ID, and then the name of the item, Ruby_arrow, and then a colon, and then in double quotes again, RubyArrow, the name of the item that will appear in the game. So next, we're going to go into our models, into our item, and we will make a model for our item. So here we're going to be making Ruby_arrow.json, click enter, and we'll be doing curly braces, and then parent, and then there colon item / generated, comma, a new line, then textures, another colon, then squiggly braces, and then layer 0, then a colon, and then your mod ID, so gems and crystals for me, and then item / Ruby_arrow. So next, what we're going to do is we're going to go into data, and we're going to go into Minecraft, not our own mod ID, but Minecraft one. And then in tags, I'm going to create a new directory called entity types. So entity_types. And then I'm going to create a new file. I'm going to call this arrows, plural, .json. And then in here, I'm going to add a curly bracket and then the word replace, and then a colon, false, a comma, and then values, colon, square brace, and enter, and then your mod ID. So for me, gems and crystals, and then a colon, and then the name of the item. So RubyArrow. Okay, what you're going to do now is you're going to copy this file and add it to the items folder here in the same directory. And that should be it. So now we can see if it worked. All right, so we spawned in here. Let's look at our item tab and we could find our Ruby arrows. Take a stack of those and find a bow. Not bowl, but bow. And let's shoot them off. There we are. So you can see it's red for the entity texture. And then you can see the item texture in there. So there you go. So I hope that was somewhat helpful. I've never really done a tutorial before, and this is my first try. So I hope if it works for you, that's great. And if you have any problems, just leave comments or leave a comment, and I will try to help if I can. And maybe other people will help if there are other people around. So yeah, so thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you learned something. And I'll see you guys later.